Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Samantha Kennedy. I'm the Executive Director for the Promise of Justice Initiative. After years of investigation and litigation, we went to trial in a class action lawsuit against Angola Prison. The lawsuit challenges the constitutionality of the farm line, a forced labor system at Angola Prison, a former plantation that reinforces slavery as a way of life and a modality for control and humiliation. We challenge it as dangerous to people's health, as well as deliberately humiliating and degrading system of punishment. On Tuesday afternoon, we learned that the court agrees that people in prison, we learned that the court agrees with people in prison that the dangers caused by working outdoors in extreme heat on the farm line is indeed unconstitutional. However, because of a recent Fifth Circuit ruling, the court believes that its hands are tied and does not have the authority to stop Angola from violating the rights of people forced to work on the farm line. The court said, but for the Fifth Circuit's ruling, it would have found in favor of our plaintiffs, which would have been a groundbreaking decision for people in prison. And this is heartbreaking. It is true that through the course of this litigation, the Promise of Justice Initiative has won significant material gains for people working in Angola's fields. Supposedly, in theory, people in prison on farmline now can have water. They could take a break when it's 100 degrees outside. They might be able to have some shade. And we feel vindicated that the court agrees that forcing people to work in dangerous heat is unconstitutional. However, this is a victory without a remedy. Angola was delivered a loss, but no consequences. It is wholly insufficient and not the way we ought to live in a country where people are supposed to have rights. Incredibly, the court only ruled on the heat claims and never once mentioned the legal issues covering slavery, psychological harm, or dignitary harm that people endure while working the farm line. The court was simply silent. Black people, our experiences, our history, and our ability to seek self-determination are under attack in the state of Louisiana. We very much see our fight for the right to not be forced to reenact slavery just because we are in prison as a critical frontier in the rights of people, Black people in particular. With the destruction of voting rights under Calais versus Louisiana, an aggressive state-level assault on Black political power, Louisiana sits at the center of the country's neo-Confederate political project. Louisiana's governmental institutions are abusing legitimate systems across the board to breathe life into Jim Crow, reestablish control, and continuously harm Black people and communities. This ecosystem, for which Angola and a slavery system undergirding farmline are systems of disenfranchisement, de-citizenship, and ultimately dehumanization that have long generated a justification for the removal and control of hundreds of thousands of Black people into Louisiana's criminal legal system, an apparatus that is among the greatest threats to everyday life of Black people and Black communities. From our work at the Promise of Justice Initiative, we know how easily a police officer and a district attorney can snatch someone out of their community and send them to prison to die. We also know from our work that people live out the rest of their lives in prison based on very little evidence or none at all, and for more than 100 years without an agreement of a unanimous jury. Whether the 1850s, 1950s, or today, in Louisiana, the racist abuse of power and law to block Black self-determination reminds Black people that we are not safe and mainstreams the idea that we do not belong, and at Angola, that we are slaves. In an environment where democracy is on the brink and anti-Black racism moves openly through official systems, we have much to do to make sure that this effort, this case, the bravery of incarcerated plaintiffs and the basic right to dignity of Black people are not foreclosed by the courts and a constitution that provides no avenue for remedy or enforcement mechanisms. At Angola Prison, slavery never ended, and the Promise of Justice Initiative, people in prison, and our community cannot accept that. As we do every day, we will continue to fight for an ambitious future where everyone, including Black people, have the right to freedom, dignity, and autonomy over our bodies. Thank you. I'll introduce Samantha Pourciau, who's the lead attorney in Vote B Louisiana.
Good afternoon. My name is Samantha Pourciau, and I'm a senior staff attorney at the Promise of Justice Initiative and lead counsel on this case, Vote B LeBlanc. In yesterday's ruling, the federal district court confirmed what our clients have known in their bodies and in their bones for years, that the conditions on Angola's farmland are unconstitutional, that forcing men to labor in dangerous heat without adequate protections violates the Eighth Amendment's prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment. That is a serious finding. It matters. And it did not come easily. It came because incarcerated men had the courage to stand up, speak out, and withstand the risks of doing so. But yesterday's ruling is also a profound disappointment because that finding was not enough. Despite acknowledging these constitutional violations, the court declined to order permanent relief. That means the protections won through the 3 years of hard-fought litigation, breaks, shade, accommodations for the most vulnerable to heat, can be rolled back by the Louisiana Department of Corrections at any time. And we know from experience that they will not hesitate to do so. During this very litigation, the state responded to a court order to protect incarcerated men forced to work on the farm line in extreme heat, not by protecting them, but by raising the threshold at which protections would kick in. This is who we're dealing with. And we are disappointed because the court looked away from the larger truth at the heart of this case. This is not simply a case about heat index thresholds. It is a case about what Angola is and always has been. Louisiana State Penitentiary sits on 18,000 acres of land that was once a slave plantation known as Angola, after the African country from which enslaved people were taken. Today, men who are predominantly Black are forced into those same fields to plant and harvest by hand. They do so under the watch of an armed guard and an overseer known as a pusher, whose job is to make sure the men work with, quote, reasonable speed and efficiency. For this, our clients earn between 0 and 4 cents an hour. Angola is and always has been a site of compelled labor. One of our named plaintiffs, Myron Smith, testified at trial about how he worked for years as a trustee on Angola's range herd, operating tractors and tending livestock. When he lost that status due to a disciplinary infraction, he was sent back to the farm line. There, he noticed that the same institution that denied men shade and rest provided misting fans for the cattle. He testified about being treated as less worthy than the animals he once cared for. Another named plaintiff, Joseph Guillory, reported that a white officer told him, "We need a good hanging because these boys are out of line." Some of the men on Angola's farmland have recurring nightmares about the fields. Class member Chidarius Moorhead's ancestors were enslaved in Louisiana. When he was assigned to the farmline as his first job at Angola, he testified that it made him feel broken, like he was betraying everyone who had fought to end slavery. He began having recurring nightmares. In one, he stood in the pecan field and saw bodies hanging from the trees, only to realize every one of them was him. He described the farmline as an everlasting nightmare that is traumatizing on a mental and spiritual level. This is the evidence the court received, and still it declined to call the system what it is or to end these racist, brutal practices. I want to be clear about what this litigation has accomplished, because the men who brought this case deserve to hear it. Because of their courage, there are men alive today who might not be. Longer and more frequent breaks, access to water and shade, expanded protections for people with heat-sensitive medical conditions, these changes are real. Incremental change, when it is the difference between heat stroke and survival, is real. We do not diminish it. But permanent protection has not been won. This ruling means that every hard-fought improvement can be reversed tomorrow, with plaintiffs' only recourse being to file another lawsuit. This alone is devastating. But what is even more devastating is that the court's ruling does not once use the word slavery, plantation, or dignity. It does not acknowledge our client's central claim, that the farmline violates the Eighth Amendment because it is designed to simulate chattel slavery, and that no human being can be subjected to that without being deprived of their inherent basic human dignity. The court's silence on that claim is deafening. But we are not silent. We are here today because what is happening inside the gates of Angola on the farmline is modern-day slavery. Our Constitution and our collective conscience should not permit it to continue. We are reviewing all legal options, and we will not stop speaking the truth of what is happening on the farmline. We will now hear from vote organizer Donald Arbuthnot, who can speak on behalf of our client, Vote, or Voice of the Experienced.
My name is Donald Arbuthnot. I'm a formerly incarcerated individual who've experienced everything that these recent speakers just spoke about. I work for an organization by the name of Vote, Voice of the Experience, who is dedicated. We are dedicated to restoring the full civil and human rights of those most impacted by incarceration, our families, and our allies. I did say I'm a formerly incarcerated person. I was there on these farm lines, and that's the very first time that I was able to just get a glimpse of what happened to people that look like me. I used to see the images on TV during the civil rights movement. I used to see it in print media and so forth and so on. But I experienced what my grandparents and great-grandparents went through when I entered the farmline at Angola. It was just unbelievable. I couldn't even, you know what, to this day I don't understand how we were able to deal with what we dealt with. I guess it's the resilience of people like us, because we have come through some ages and eons, right, to get where we are today. But some of the conditions that we experienced in Angola, it was unprecedented. Some of the killings, some of the brutality in the fields, in those fields. Hundreds of us scattered out over those fields in extreme heat, under all type of conditions. We would go out in foggy weather. They know it was too foggy to put us in the field. They'll just line us up on the fence line. Nobody could move until the fog cleared. That fog may have not cleared until 11, 12 o'clock, and we are sitting along a fence line. We've gone out in cold, unbearable cold, and many times you are standing in that cold, waiting on orders to go from one field to another, march from one line to another. It was just unbelievable. They talk about the conditions. When we were thirsty, they had a horse-drawn carriage would come around with a water tank on it, and they had cans, literally like cold drink cans, maybe 2 or 3 hanging from that bucket thing, and you would get in line and go and drink from a can. One can, and it was just numerous people drinking out of one can. We don't know what other people ahead of us had, if they had anything, but we drank out of those same type of cans. We've actually been spoken to and said things to us that was unbelievable, but it was said, you know. I used to always think about what my foreparents went through, actually experienced at the hands of white people. We all experienced that were in those farm lines. We all have images of that. When I was released, I still have images of that. I know what they are going through every day they go out in those fields. And the fact that the way this case went, I'm not surprised. People like me are not surprised. Just think about it. Nothing has gone our way since we came to this country, or was brought to this country, brutally brought to this country. Nothing have gone our way. So when you talk about something that's dehumanizing, Angola farmline, the conditions in the dormitories and stuff like that, where men would literally come out of those fields, cane cotton fields, and fall asleep on a cot and wouldn't even go and eat. They were too tired to go and eat. Would not even shower. Some men did not shower for days because they were too tired they would have to get up the morning and go back to that field. We went through those type of conditions. In the rain, in the cold, in the fog, and in the heat, we experienced those kinds of conditions daily. I was in the farm line, not days, not weeks, months. I was in the farm line for years. When you enter that prison and they process you, you went to the farm lines. And I mean, people just like me, we used to all talk about the same things. We talked about the same things, the brutality that we saw. A lot of those men would not have recommitted a crime or whatever they did in prison had it not been for the conditions. It breed that type of thing the same way it did on those plantations, the brutality on those plantations. It breeded brutality. It breeded hatred. Yes, it did. And I experienced that. Slavery never ended in Louisiana. We know that. We all know that. Men on Angola farm line are compelled to work under conditions that I just spoke about that mimic slavery. They are punitive. They never was to, like they speak about this process of rehabilitation. That's the word I'm looking for. It's not for no rehabilitation. How can it be a farm line? Think about it. Under those type of conditions, it was punitive. Those people on those horses with those guns saying all type of ugly things to you and calling you all type of names, it was punitive. Having you work under those conditions, it was punitive. It did not have any type of rehabilitative effect or cause inherent in that. It was all punitive. So that's what we did. We were working under conditions, compelled to work under conditions that mimic slavery. That's what it was designed to do. No other way. Some of the men forced to work on the farm line have lasting trauma. I have trauma today from the farm lines, and I know many more do because I'm in contact with them. We talk about it, right? Including recurring nightmares of being enslaved or seeing bodies lynched in the farm line fields. I've actually seen people killed in the fields. I've seen stabbing in the fields. I've seen men hit with dish bank blades in the field. Yeah. The farm line, I said, is abusive. It's dehumanizing. It ignores the inherent dignity of human beings. People who are working while incarcerated deserve the same dignity and protections of all other workers. To the people still in Angola, to their families and support people and loved ones, please don't give up. We aren't. We can and will end this form of slavery in Louisiana and elsewhere. Matter of fact, Louisiana is going to be a model for other places like Mississippi and Alabama and so forth and so on. The forced farm line labor is just one example of exploited practices that are present in Louisiana plantation prison. I didn't say anything about prison enterprises, the money they make off us in the canteens. What'd that bring you back to? You never own anything. Everything the state owns. They charge these exorbitant prices for just things that you would not believe. Like, what, really? Yeah, they they put those type of prices on those things in the stores. So you never have money. You never have money. Our ancestors never had money. It was always taken. They had to buy from the plantation. Don't give up. To those that are still inside, to the families and loved ones of those inside, and those that are post-release right now, don't give up. Thank you.
I can take any questions folks have.
Yeah, so the judge ruled that you guys showed that these were Eighth Amendment violations that were occurring there, but his hands are tied, as you said. What's the legal strategy going forward? Is there anything you're thinking about how you can help people who are in these conditions that they ruled are cruel and unusual?
I think what the judge said was important here. You can't force people to work in conditions of extreme heat. And if you look at the decision, there's a diagram that shows here's the red zone of when you're working outside and it could cause death, stroke, like horrible medical complications. And we're deep in the red zone, even at 103 degrees. And so the judge is clearly communicating to the prison and to any prison that is forcing people to labor outside that this is serious constitutional red zone. Don't do it. It's a clear message. And it's also a clear message that you have to give these guys breaks, water, shade, all of these normal, human things that people need to survive. Even if the court doesn't order it, the court clearly sent a message to the prison and to all prisons in the South that you have to treat these people like human beings.
But is there anything you guys can do moving forward for this, or anything you're thinking about next steps that you can share?
We are considering all options. It's pretty early right now. Yeah.
This is from a reporter. What to make of the fact that the ruling totally ignores the dignitary harm claims and makes no mention of slavery? Curious to hear your perspectives on that from both the lawyers and the formerly incarcerated folks.
Yeah, so we're obviously very disappointed. The court's failure to address dignitary harm ignores the lived reality of the people that are forced to labor on the farmland at Angola. The harm is not only physical, it's not only the heat, it's not only the lack of shade and water and breaks, but it is rooted in degradation and racial trauma that harkens back to Louisiana's history as a slave state and Angola's history as a slave plantation. And that silence speaks volumes. And here we are in the South, and as civil rights litigants and civil rights activists, we rely on the federal courts to enforce the Constitution, to enforce the basic civil rights of the people that are living here. And so it's, again, extremely disappointing that this federal judge wouldn't step in and make a statement that we as a society right now in 2026 should not be reenacting slavery, should not be forcing the men that are incarcerated in Angola to reenact slavery as punishment and as a means of breaking new prisoners. That's a step too far in this society. We have standards of decency and standards of humanity. And again, we're very disappointed in that ruling. Yeah.
How confident are you guys that the Louisiana State Penitentiary will uphold its end of the bargain in terms of monitoring heat effectively and making sure that people are taken off the field when there's a heat index that exceeds 103?
There's no guarantees. We hope that Warden Kane will do the right thing and keep those protection measures implemented at the prison and even include more measures of protection. But there's no guarantees, and the prison could slip back into the same old constitutional violations that it was committing before we filed this lawsuit. Yeah. All right. Happy to talk to anybody else individually. Thanks.
I should have asked your name before we started. Could you just
Cecelia, Kappel,
first name spelled